Good evening and welcome into the Pacers Podcast Show. I'm Kyle Newman, your host.
And I'm Rhett Hensley, your co-host.
The Pacers Show is here, so cheer. It's time to talk about the greatest team ever. A championship? No, not yet, but never say never. Like this show, it's a fresh start with new parts. The squad is ready, slow and steady. I can't hear you, Pacers fans. Make some noise.
Whoop, whoop.
Rhett. There we go. I like it. Rhett Hensley, our 26th Pacers podcast show, coming to you 2 weeks out. Sorry, folks. We've got ourselves busy schedules, and there's just not as much to talk about in the offseason, so we're trying to do it as much as we can, gearing up for the season to start. But nonetheless, Rhett Hensley, we do have the Pacers show tonight, and we get to talk Pacers talk. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. What about you, Kyle?
He says the same thing every time, ladies and gentlemen, and then he doesn't elaborate. Rhett, I need more than you're doing great. This is wonderful, but how are you doing?
You know, I hooped today, so
there we
that
go.
was fun.
Talk to me. That is good. You didn't dunk on anyone. I'll see it when I believe it.
Not today. Not today.
But that's good. He thinks he's Paul George or something here. Hey, I've never seen him dunk in real life, people, so I give him a hard time about it. Yeah, that's true. Just like the show, the Pacers season. That's true. Well, that's great, Red. That's really great. Work's going well. School's going well.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing better than school.
That's right. Remember that.
Hey, school's for fools.
He has to pull a reference. Well, hey, what's a Rhett and Kyle conversation without a reference to a funny movie? That's for sure. Well, I'm doing great too, Red. I am. Things are going really well. Okay, I haven't been able to hoop in a little bit, but I'm looking forward to getting back to that. Haven't been able to golf in quite a while. Been a little disappointed about that. Hopefully that's coming soon when you come and visit me next week or the week after. Whenever it is that you come down, I got to try and get some revenge with that. But other than that, school's great. Work's great.
Good.
Yes. I'm going down to Nashville tomorrow to support the Tops opening game against Vanderbilt. Can't wait for that. Got a little date with the lady at Cheesecake Factory and a little walk around.
Out.
Yeah, no, not at all. We're going all out. That's for sure. $25 gift card.
We're going all out.
As I say, $25 gift card. Just joking.
Wow, that's why
Rhett, there's only one cheesecake factory near us, and it's in Nashville. So it worked out perfect naturally. But you see, you get a gift, someone treats you. All right, well, I'll treat her. Perfect. So that's how that works. But nonetheless, we are ready to talk Indiana Pacers basketball, and we can't wait for the start of the season. Yes, Rhett, it's only a month away until the preseason starts. Aren't you such a fan of the preseason in the NBA, too?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I can tell by that face. Well, we're not going to talk preseason. We're going to start off, Rhett, about something that came up a couple weeks ago. It was made official. How about the Pacers getting their own training facility, brand new? It didn't take long, Rhett. They put this in, a petition for it, and it seems like just 3 days later it was approved.
Yeah, it was quick.
What do you think of this new facility downtown right near Bankers Life Fieldhouse?
Well, I think it's going to be good. It's showing that the Pacers mean business, and they partnered with St. Vincent Hospital. They're going to have a fantastic what word am I looking for?
Partnership?
That too. Medical facility there.
Yes.
Wow, space that one. Yeah, and I think it's going to be fantastic for the Indiana Pacers. And to bring people in just for that reason.
Yeah, well, the Pacers are one of the handful of teams that have actually jumped on board and built a new training facility. Over the past 12 years, the Cavs, the Clippers, the Jazz, the Pelicans, and the Thunder have all built new practice facilities. The Bulls opened their new training facility near the United Center last year. The Lakers, in May, announced plans to build a new headquarters and training facility in El Segundo, California, about 40 minutes from the Staples Center. In 2014, the Trailblazers renovated their 98 training facility to try and keep it up. So teams are jumping on board with it, Rhett. Isn't it fitting that Indiana's doing it now when this team is looking to build and to grow and be a destination for players to want to come? This helps, having a nice new training facility.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Have you seen pictures of it?
I have seen the mock-up, and it looks fantastic. We should be getting our all-access pass to go back there soon, Kyle.
Yes.
To, lay our eyes on what it's going to look like. But yeah, we look forward to that one.
We do, and that's really great that they got this right across from the field house. It'll be nice to see it, and wouldn't it be great to be able to go in there ourselves, Rhett, and use that nice facility, meet with the players, get some interviews for the show, whatever it may be. That would be sweet. But nonetheless, this is a brilliant move for the Indiana Pacers. So kudos to them, as we mentioned that. Rhett, I want to bring up, as we're going to kind of talk about a couple random different off-season observations and get some juices flowing here with some discussions, things you brought up to me, some things we have going on here. Well, the first thing that I stumbled upon here was Candace Buckner, the Indy Star insider for the Pacers, had an article that came out toward the end of summer, 5 observations about the new look Pacers. All right, so we're gonna kind of touch, because it's been a while since we talked about some of these things, just so our listeners understand where we're at, of where we our predictions here. So we're gonna start with the first one. There's been a lot of moves, Rhett. So with these, will the Pacers move up in the standings, and to where? Let's catch everyone up. What's your prediction?
For the prediction for
the Pacers' standings, their move up in the standings based on all these moves that have happened, this new look team.
Yes. Well, I think I'm going to stick around with my 4 to 5, more like 4 spot. But I do think the Pacers can do better. This is a weak Eastern Conference, but the chances of them getting any close, like taking that number 1 spot, is not very likely unless they get the ball rolling. But the teams that I do think that are going to be up there ahead of the Indiana Pacers, that's going to be Cleveland Cavaliers, Chicago Bulls. The number 3 spot, I don't even really know who I'd put there.
So you're not putting Indiana there.
Probably have to put the Hawks and then the Indiana Pacers.
Okay, well, we're going to disagree a little bit here. I am going to agree with your first couple, and we're going to switch 3 and 4. I have the Pacers finishing 3rd in the East with these moves, and if Paul George can stay healthy and look like the old Paul George, I see no reason why they can't get back to the 3rd spot in the East to be up as one of the top competitive teams. Now, I will say this: I won't throw the option of Indiana getting the 2nd spot however this Derrick Rose thing plays out with the Bulls.
That's true.
If Derrick Rose ends up being convicted of the charge that's against him right now, that would be a huge blow to them, and I would think that loss would be big enough for Indiana to move ahead of the Bulls, and I'd put the Pacers at number 2 in the East this year. As long as everything works out for these new moves.
I would like to say that I'm not completely sold on the Atlanta Hawks being a for real team. I still think that there is a great chance that they're going to fall off the radar this coming year. But they did finish number 1 last year. So I kind of have to put them up there just because, you know, they're probably going to be coming back for some blood.
Yes, absolutely. The thing that I want to see here is with the signings. It's another thing, you know. I want to see Indiana. I want to see this team gel together well and come back to the old Indiana Pacers that we know and love. Now, another observation that Buckner had here was she said that the Pacers went all in for Monte Ellis, but she thinks Jordan Hill is the sleeper signing, and I kind of mentioned this. Here's the thing. She said it could be argued that the 6'10 Hill played his best basketball last season, mostly operating as an undersized center. He averaged 8 rebounds and ranked in the top 20 in the NBA in defensive rebound percentage. So, and she said while previously just an offensive player, reliant around plays around the rim, he's expanded his game to a mid-range. And over the past 3 years, he's increased his attempts and percentage from 10 to 16 feet. So this is the aspect of Jordan Hill why I think this is almost the bigger signing for Indiana. I watched quite a bit of Jordan Hill last year, and that's why I was so excited. And I kept telling you I thought it was too good to be true with this trade. That I didn't think that the signing, I didn't think that it would happen. It was kind of random. It was like a pipe dream. Oh, well, Jordan Hill's a free agent. Maybe he'd come to the Pacers when he had no reason to. But he did, and that says a lot. And I think it says a lot about what he sees in this team and that the Pacers are going to be for real again. And the fact that that happened, it still goes to show how great Larry Bird is at making moves happen. And this city is ready. So I don't know if you agree with that, but I do agree with her. I think Jordan Hill is the sleeper signing of these off-season moves.
Well, you know, I mean, you have a great thought there. You know, if he stays out of trouble, which hopefully he does, and he improves his defense, then yeah, I think that there's a good chance. But I still think my theory, which hopefully will play out right, you know, I think that Miles Turner will end up being one of the starters by the end of the year. And Jordan Hill's going to be a backup. But that's a theory, and that's the theory that I'm going with. But I'm hoping that theory might be wrong and just Jordan Hill really show us what he's made of this year.
Well, the thing is, I disagree with that, but if that were to happen, that would be pretty sweet from the aspect of that means Miles Turner's going to kill it. And if that's the case, then kudos to the Indiana Pacers and even to Jordan Hill if he's still playing that well, but Miles Turner just dominates and deserves that spot.
Larry Bird, it says that he's going to be getting playing time, and so will Joe Buckets.
Yes, he
Joe
did.
Young.
He did.
You know, one thing that I would like to touch on is, you know, I have seen some reports that think that Miles Turner is going to be a franchise changer for the Indiana Pacers. So, you know, with that said, there's great hopes. People think that he was one of the biggest steals in the NBA draft this year. So, hopefully he's going to live up to the expectations on that one.
Yeah, it would be great if he will. That's for sure. Now, I think what's clear, as she mentions the third observation, that the Pacers' greatest strength is still a healthy Paul George. He is the leader of this team, the heart and soul, everything that's been built around him. That's clearly, Rhett, the key, the biggest key going into this season is a healthy Paul George. That's no question. Now, as we move, and we're going to get back to the Paul George topic. That's one of the other things I want to talk about that was mentioned. But moving on to the fourth observation, as she says, Pacers' most glaring hole, question mark, the still to be decided locker room voice. So we know who's the best player on the roster, Paul George, but who exactly will be the leader of the locker room? She poses. Rhett, what do you think here? You think it has to be Paul George?
Paul George has to be the motivator for the team, the locker room changer, the one that gets them pumped up in the locker room. He has to be that LeBron type of player, not just on the court, but if you see LeBron off the court, you can see him getting the team hyped. He is the person that is building the team up. So I think that's definitely going to have to still be there.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I'm going to say it needs to be, first and foremost, it's got to be Paul George. But if there was another guy who could be a locker room voice, it would be George Hill, the veteran as well on this team that also is part of the core. It's only him and George left. It's got to be one of them that could be a leader in this locker room, no doubt about it. So there's just no question me, though, that it's Paul George first and foremost. So I did want to throw that out there. I do believe that George Hill could be the voice of the locker room, too, and hopefully he will still look like the George Hill that's been improving each year. If we get the George Hill last year, that would be phenomenal. The final observation she has here, Rhett, and it's a good point. It's something I brought up to you with Joe Young and what's going to happen and why I thought it was a brilliant signing and what makes me believe that he will make this 15-man roster, because this is the concern. There's so many bigs and wings on this Indiana Pacers roster, but there are few real point guards. And by that I mean there's only one real point guard, and it's starter George Hill, and he's not even truly a point guard. So with that, Rhett, you think Joe Young has to make the roster, right? They need depth.
He's definitely making the roster. No question.
So you think that he's got to be the guy that will get the backup point guard role, and quite a bit.
I think that he needs it. No doubt that I think that he's going to make the roster. We already have Larry Bird saying that he's definitely going to be getting playing time this season. So there's no question in my mind that thinking that he's not going to make the team.
Well, I agree with you. Do you think that Indiana needs it based on only one true point guard? Like, do you think he'll help that much?
Yeah.
Being that young.
Oh, if you want to think of a real true point guard, he did play shooting guard in college. But the guy's just got incredible hands. And, he obviously has to transition into a point guard because he's just too small.
Yes.
But, yeah, I think that the Indiana Pacers definitely need him. Definitely need him coming off the bench.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So, 5 observations there were really pretty much on the same page, and so that's something we can throw out there. Now I want to start talking a little bit, Rhett, about a couple other things that you and I have thrown at each other, and something that I've reached out to someone about too, just to get a little discussion going. But first things first. Paul George, you threw out to me about a week ago the idea, the asinine possibility that Paul George would maybe get traded. And I said, there's no way in heck that would happen. And I don't see it happening, and everything that I've researched is there is no reports on it happening. All I have found
there's no reports.
Was that there is somebody just wanted to write a little piece to throw out that idea of it possibly happening. And this is what they threw out there. It was a Phoenix Suns blog, and they released an article possibly involving a trade with Paul George, and it's ridiculous. And Indiana would never be so foolish. Basically, Phoenix would get Paul George, Indiana would get Markieff Morris, Alex Len, and T.J. Warren, a 2016 first-round pick, and a 2021 first-round pick. New York would get George Hill, 2016 second-round pick, and the Sixers would get Jose Calderon, Archie Goodwin, and C.J. Miles, along with a 2016 first-round pick and a 2017 second-round pick. So, Rhett, knowing that, just that ridiculous scenario thrown out there, it's
I wouldn't say it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It would not happen.
Let me put it in this aspect. Do you want, if Paul George just comes back awful, not the Paul George that you think that you've seen in the past and everything like that, are you going to want them on the team? Do you think that Larry Bird is going to keep that on the team if he's trying to rebuild around a superstar?
Yes, I do.
No. Because
it's his first full season back from a season-long injury that was a severe injury.
Now, has Larry Bird steered away from pulling big triggers already in this offseason?
No, but it's clear that Paul George, he wouldn't be here if he was not the man that is the franchise of this team. This team is built around Paul George. It would be a disaster if they decided to get rid of him. They wouldn't be able to get any. You would be taking a step back and not get somebody worth Paul George to have this team continue its upward climb.
Now, from what I'm saying by that, that trade is awful. That trade right there is awful. That'd be stupid to do, but I'm talking about in general, if the Pacers just had an awful season.
I don't see it happening, though.
I don't see it happening either, and I even told you in that text message, I don't see it happening.
And with that, if it did, I still don't see it happening. I still think it would be awful. Paul George it's clear he's a superstar type player. He's not going to be awful.
Well, you have said in the past that we're going to have to see how he does this year because you kind of still are fearful of how it's going to end up happening. So, there's always a chance that he's not going to come back to the superstar.
Yes,
form.
but I'll make an analogy.
You want to do a retraction?
I'll make an analogy. What have the Chicago Bulls done with their superstar Derrick Rose? They've stuck by the man who's gone through 2 ACL injuries that have ended his seasons twice, and everybody was pressuring them and on them. He's the franchise player? How could you stick with him? Is he going to be the same? And look how it's turned out. He's fine.
Might bite him in the butt now.
And from a separate issue, from a basketball standpoint, Derrick Rose is back. And they stuck with him because they invested into a man that they were building this team around and that fans built an identity with. That's the same thing with Paul George. It won't happen. It would be foolish for Indiana to do. And what I wanted to bring up is I wanted to see if anybody else would get in on the conversation. And I did reach out to a man named Tyler Smith, who we actually had on this show that we interviewed. Editor from the IndySportsLegends.com, and I asked him if he thinks that it would be a possibility that Paul George would get traded from Indiana, and his response was plain and simple. He said, not unless they want an empty field house again. And I laughed at that, but it's true. That it would be detrimental to this organization to do something like that. You just don't clean house, and especially if he doesn't have one good year coming up. You just say, we'll just throw everything away. Bye-bye, Paul George. It doesn't happen like that. And I make the reference to Derrick Rose as my point. And there was actually another guy who chimed in, Jose Gonzalez. I don't know who that is, but he said no, LOL, and then after that, he responded again, and he said, I can guarantee you no way. So people...
I'm glad he can guarantee that.
Yes.
He can guarantee that. What part of management is he in? But
what part of management are you in, or am I in?
I'm giving a prediction.
And so is he.
But
so, well, that's fan language, Rhett. That's fan language. We've all said things like that, but it's
from a standpoint. How many coaches have you seen that didn't have a great year and we would think, oh man, this organization would just be flat out stupid to fire him. How many times has that happened? I can tell you at least 3 times this offseason, a couple times last offseason. How many players have you seen that gets traded away that you would think that would not get traded away from a team that would actually need to keep them? I mean, it happens.
It does, but it just won't happen with this team. And I'm surprised that you even think that it's a possibility and that you would be willing to dump Paul George if he has one bad year.
Oh,
That's surprising.
I'm not saying that I would like it to happen. I'm saying that there's a possibility. I never once said that, I'm going to get rid of him. No, I'm
So
saying
what would you want?
There's a possibility.
You would want him kept?
Depending on the
so it's clear what you think. You're telling me basically if he has an awful year, you want him gone.
If the trade would be like, I love Paul George, but if there's
doesn't sound like it.
If there's a trade that you couldn't pass up, I mean, I would not want Markieff Morris or any draft picks or anything like that. That's for sure. I don't think Paul George is a lot more valuable than that. And you also got to think that I'm still on the standpoint that Paul George is going to have a breakout year this year. And I kind of think the whole trade talk is, just flat out stupid. But I'm saying if, God forbid, he has an awful season, there's that possibility.
Anything's a possibility, which is why I bring that up, which is why it was brought up when we brought it up. But I don't even want to think about it or fathom it, and I can't. That's why it's just mind-boggling because I just don't see something like that happening, and I don't want to see it happen. So it gets thrown out of the window. And
I mean, that's the same thing with Kevin Durant. There's been trade talks about him. He's been injured for the past year and a half.
The difference with Kevin Durant, though, is that there's another superstar that's maybe better than him on that team that fans are actually more in love with, I would say. So, yeah, that's a different situation for a different player who's also older than Paul George. So I think that it's one of those situations where Paul George is everything to this city. Paul George is the Reggie Miller to the Indiana Pacers. He is everything to them. And
there's a 1 year difference between Paul George and Kevin Durant, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's still a year, Rhett. He's still older than him.
By a lot.
The fact of the matter is, Paul George is not Kevin Durant. Paul George is Paul George.
Kevin Durant has an MVP.
And so be it. And that doesn't matter to me because I'm not a Thunder fan. I'm a Paul George and an Indiana Pacers fan. And he is capable of bringing this team an MVP and was on his way to that. Then again, what's it really matter? The Thunder haven't won a championship, so then you got to start breaking down, what really matters. No. They haven't, but we're talking about the player. So the point is,
the Thunder haven't won the championship.
No, exactly. And my point with that is that I'm basically saying awards don't matter. Is what I'm saying. To me, it doesn't matter about that. He's our star player. I don't care if he hasn't won an MVP. I don't care that Kevin Durant's won an MVP. That doesn't matter to me. It's two different teams.
I'm saying if this type of caliber of a player can get traded away, so can Paul George.
Yeah, it can happen. I don't want to see it happen.
What I'm talking about from the business standpoint of the Indiana Pacers, there's a possibility of it happening. Now, would I want it to happen? No. Do I think it's going to happen? No. Is he going to be a Pacer for life? Probably. Yes,
I hope so. It sounds like that's what he wants, and it should be.
Tell you what, he needs to be hitting the gym a little bit more lately. I've been seeing him out partying lately, and I don't like that.
Well, hopefully he'll be ready to play regardless, but the fact of the matter is it would be the Pacers would be in a tough situation, which is why I don't see them even considering it if he had one bad year. They'd give him a chance, like the Bulls would have given their superstar. That means everything to the city, Derrick Rose, a chance. And I agree with Tyler Smith. The field house, this organization would take a dive if they got rid of a player like Paul George. I don't even care
Basically, be like the Malice of the Palace. That type of dead.
Yeah, I don't care if he had 2 straight years of being awful. If they got rid of him, people would still be so upset, and it would be done. It doesn't matter who they bring in. It really doesn't. So, that's something I wanted to bring up and I was curious about, and you mentioned Miles Turner and Joe Young, and I also asked Tyler Smith, do you think Miles Turner or Joe Young will be more of an immediate impact for the Pacers? To which he responded, he said Turner. He said they have a lot of guards. Bird said Turner has surprised even him so far. So it sounds like, Miles Turner for sure.
I'm on the same page as that one, but also I think that Joe Young is going to, make a good impact also.
Yeah, I would agree, but
those are just steals.
I think that I agree though. If I had to pick between the two, I think I would side with him. Side with Turner, based on the position. But having said that, that's just because of his promise and seeing everything. He's more NBA ready. Joey Buckets is a little small for the position, and he's got to transition from playing shooting guard in college to point guard in the NBA.
What do you mean by NBA ready?
He's more NBA ready because he fits the position that he's coming into this league better than Joey Buckets, who's transitioning from shooting guard in college to point guard in the NBA, and that's a big change. And he would be coming in filling in a role where the Pacers, he's the only other point guard that Indiana has. So that's a lot more pressure on the guy. So I would pick Miles Turner to be more of an impact player than Joey Young. But, we will see because the depth, Paul George will be playing power forward a lot this year. Jordan Hill, I believe, will start and will have his time ahead of Miles Turner. Whether that switches, regardless, I still think immediately that's what it'll be. And so, I don't know, Red. I do agree with Turner, though, out of the two having more of an immediate impact. Do you?
Yeah. I think that, like you said, Miles Turner is going to be the more immediate impact. But, also I think that Joe Young is going to be contributing to this Indiana Pacers team right away. But, like I said, Miles Turner is going to be making the bigger impact because, I do expect Miles Turner to potentially end up starting by the end of the year, especially if his defense and offense come together, unlike Jordan Hill. How he lacks that defense. Now we have seen with Frank Vogel in the past with players, if they don't play defense, then they won't be playing. And Chris Copeland is a perfect example of that. So, the guy can score. The guy can't play defense. So, where he had a seat at? Pretty far down the bench. And now he's not a Pacer. So
yeah. It's very true. Defense is first in Frank Vogel in this organization's mind. So just something interesting to think about. And you mentioned Paul George, the comeback. He's already a candidate for being like the comeback player of the year. And why wouldn't he be? The man is superstar-like. He just needs to prove that he is still at that level.
Great confidence coming back already, too. And that's what I think is very key.
Yeah, I do too. I've developed a real appreciation for Paul George in this organization, like I did, and like a lot of fans did with Reggie Miller and the Pacers. And you start to get that sense that he'll be a Pacers for life, and he is everything.
He's the Reggie Miller of our time, I feel like.
So
it's going to end up happening,
and that's very necessary, and it'll keep people in the seats at Fieldhouse, and it will bring players like Monte Ellis and Jordan Hill to Indiana. This team is beyond. It is rebuilt. It is now past tense. This team is rebuilt, and it's time to continue the success they've had, minus last year, and bring back those great rivalry games against the Heat and everything, which I'll have you know, even with the banged-up Pacers last year, Indiana took the series against the rivaled Heat, who had moves of getting Goran Dragic, and they had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. They had a deeper team than they had a deeper team last year than Indiana did after Indiana's injuries, and yet the Pacers still took that rivalry series. So, what to expect from them this year? A lot more, and to continue those winning ways, and hopefully to be able to start something with LeBron and the Cavs. And to beat the Cavs, because quite frankly, that's the biggest concern for me as a Pacers fan, is that series. This Cleveland Cavaliers team is the real deal, and it's going to be tough for Indiana against them, not to mention they are in the same division. So we will see them quite a bit. But if Indiana could steal one, it'd be nice if Indiana would not get swept against this Cavs team this year. I can see it happening, though. But I'd like to think Indiana can get at least one, maybe on the home court.
You also got to understand that Tristan Thompson's not going to accept anything less than a max contract, and so far the Cleveland Cavaliers are not wanting to offer that. So they might be losing a big player this coming season. Yeah,
I don't know how that will play out. We will see. I have a feeling there'll be a caving in there, and he will. Stay with Cleveland, but that would be the type of player that I would love to see in an Indiana Pacers uniform right there. If there was any way,
we're calling out to
nice?
Basketball gods.
It would be nice to see if it could happen, but again, the Pacers core, it's built. They got the pieces here, so let's see how they do going forward here. Very interesting to throw that out there with Paul George and to discuss the options and get a little feedback. I'm glad that I got some responses because I want to try to be able to incorporate into the shows, talking about some listeners or some people's comments in general, whatever it is.
Questions and feedback.
That's right. Something that we can start in response can talk about and be like, all right, I agree or I disagree. Plain and simple. But, Rhett, really the last bit, unless you'll have anything else after this, the only other thing that I found out there, off-season news-wise for Indiana, is a little article yesterday about the Pacers' uniforms boring, Hill's huge catch. It was kind of a couple different things. First of all, if you haven't seen, folks, George Hill caught one massive fish. And by that I mean this thing could eat a shark. Yeah, it looks like Piranha 1500. This thing is unbelievable, and these guys like to fish or what, Rhett?
Oh, they love to fish. They love it.
Yeah, I really can't. It's impressive that he caught a fish this big. I mean, it's beyond river monsters style of a size fish.
Scooby-Doo would definitely run away from him.
Yes, he would. Shaggy would be right there with him. That's a very good point. But a couple other things. This guy's disrespectful. Man, I just can't stand the disrespect. This guy, according to the Sporting News, Sean Gentile is his name. Or Gentile, one or the other. Sean Gentile, the Pacers uniforms, he says, are terminally boring. He said out of a possible 10, he gives them a rating of a 7 based on other factors. Remember Paul George? He last played in 2009 and was very good. The Pacers' jerseys are terminally boring. Even if they change, they'll never change. Yes, he played last year. He's taking a shot at Paul George. Man, and that's just disrespectful. And first of all, they are not terminally boring. I love these jerseys, Rhett.
Yeah, well, I think that would be awesome to see is kind of like the Miami Heat have talked about doing, is having a really fun jersey as an alternate come out. I think the Indiana Pacers, that would be pretty sweet for them to do.
If they came out with a black and gold alternative.
That would be pretty sweet, which they have. They have done that. They've played one game last season with that.
That'd be great. I don't remember that game.
Yeah, they did. But, I think that would be pretty sweet. Just recreate something. Incorporate an awesome old-fashioned blue and just throw it on the jersey.
Now, we love the gold. We love the gold jerseys. Those are a tradition that have been started.
Do great in them. And my Paul George one is sitting in the closet.
I love the gold. I do love the gold. I got to tell you, I'm starting to get a little bit over the modern, the blue away jerseys and the white home ones.
Yeah.
They're a little plain. It's time to, like you said, incorporate something in these jerseys that make them a little bit more unique. A little boring, are they? Whether it's like as simple as, like you said, put an old school logo, changing colors goes a long way. You have to do something with the striping. It's just a boring, it's kind of a boring look to those uniforms.
Now, with these Hickory jerseys coming out.
Now that's going to be great. I can't wait.
I'm going to be ordering mine soon.
I bet you are. I bet you are. That would be nice. So they just drop that price in half, right?
Yeah,
they just cut it in half.
$20, and I would totally do it.
Exactly.
I'll pull the trigger.
So a couple other things as this article goes on. Some more disrespect. This is even more disrespectful. I can't take it. Sporting News, again, now this time, Adai Joseph, he gives the Pacers a C when it comes to offseason moves. He said, and I quote, "You can't look at this Pacers team and see one as good as the 2012-2014 group. But is there any reason to believe that keeping Stevenson, Hibbert, and West would have been the right move? Ellis was a good addition, a needed second ball handler to run with George Hill. Miles Turner was a good pick who dominated Orlando Summer League. But there are concerns elsewhere in this plan. George may now be playing power forward, the bench is weak, and the interior defense likely will take a major blow." All right, Rhett, my quick response is this guy doesn't know the Indiana Pacers very well. Because our bench is actually fairly deep, first of all, with players who were starters last year and contributed a lot. Second of all, the defense is not going to take a major blow. Defense is first and foremost by Frank Vogel. We will be fine defensively. That's what stands out to me. But no, keeping Stevenson, Hibbert, and West was not the right move, and I think it'll prove out to be that way, especially Hibbert. My goodness. Stevenson, I'd love to see him back in a Pacers uniform. That's tragic how that ended. But David West, Roy Hibbert, it was time to move on. Hibbert especially. But, Rhett, what do you think about this Joseph's comments here about Pacers getting a C in what he says?
Well, I think that the bench, he is a little right on that one. So we got Solomon Hill, Jan Mahimi, Glenn Robinson, Shane
Winning. You say Sean every time.
Every time. Chase Budinger, not a fan of that move.
I like it. He'll help.
And Rakeem Christmas. Rakeem Christmas, I think, has potential. But, I think it's just an all-around kind of a weak bench. But you do have Rodney Stuckey going to be coming off the bench, and that's going to be a great sixth man. But other than that, I kind of agree with the bench move. But around that, the starters are just going to be phenomenal. And to that, the 2012 Indiana Pacers team, hands down, probably one of the best teams in years for the Indiana Pacers. And honestly, probably my favorite team for the Indiana Pacers.
Well,
but, that time has passed, and it's time to build off what we have now.
It is, and
I think that this team is actually going to be fairly decent, and the moves this offseason was fairly good.
Well, yeah, I would not agree with him with saying weak. The Philadelphia 76ers bench is weak. The Indiana Pacers
team is weak.
is not. So that's disrespectful to use that type of a word to describe the Pacers bench. It's, let's just say, needs improvement is maybe the best way to put it, but is still fine. It's okay. The bench is okay, is how I would probably sum it up if I had to give it one word. A couple guys you mentioned won't be on this roster this year, most likely. Rakeem Christmas, Glenn Robinson III. But let's keep in mind, you didn't mention a couple players. Jordan Hill or Miles Turner is going to be on the bench, and it's probably going to be Miles Turner for the first part of the season. So you've got that. You mentioned Rodney Stuckey. Chase Budinger, I think, is going to help off the bench. Lavoy Allen, another solid player that I think will help a lot. Jan Mahimi, here's the thing. This guy has potential, but, is he going to keep declining like a Roy Hibbert, or will he step up and prove? Solomon Hill, this is the man's time to prove this will be a huge bench player. Or will he prove that it's time to move on from him, too, because he is too overrated? I don't know.
You also, he played just flat out awful in the summer league. So if he can't keep up with that competition, then how can he keep up with the NBA competition, in my eyes?
Yeah, you'd have to wonder something like that. Maybe he'll prove us wrong, and if that's the case, he'll be another key bench player for Indiana, which will be great. So I don't know. Aside from that, though, Rhett, I would not call Indiana's bench weak. I would say it's okay.
Improvement.
It needs improvement. It's okay. Maybe a trade or two will be made. I don't know. But there's enough key players there for Indiana to make a run. There's no doubt about it, to me. So, Rhett, do you have anything else for the Indiana Pacers in this offseason here?
No, don't have anything else. Think we got everything covered. But yeah, I think that's the show.
Well, one thing is, finishing a little early again, folks, because there's just not as much to talk about here in the off season until some games roll around, and even when the season does start, which it does, Rhett, start up here in a month. The first preseason games will start up. You know how much you're a fan of the preseason in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
That'll start up, about 8 or 9 games in the preseason. But, Rhett, I do want to throw this out there. What will you be looking for in the preseason for the Pacers? What is the most important thing to you come preseason time that you want to see and need to see from this Indiana team or player, whatever it is?
Rookie progress. That's a big one for me. I think that's the big thing for the Indiana Pacers right now, to see how well this young team can play against the actual
these young bloods.
Yeah, these young bloods.
That's right. They don't know.
That's a great little clip. But
it is.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the big thing for the Indiana Pacers this year. You got quite a few young guys that they need to prove themselves. So,
yeah, that's true. I'm going to agree with you. I think I want to see two things. First and foremost, how do Joe Young and Miles Turner fare in their first real NBA game action?
Great.
How will they play? I want to see that. Do they continue their success from the summer league? 2, Paul George. I'm going to say 3, folks. I'm changing my mind each second here. 3 things. 2, Paul George. Do we see glimpses of Paul George shining in the little minutes he'll play?
Do you see him playing?
Yes, I think Paul George will play. Maybe not the first games, but maybe as it gets closer to the regular season starting, I think he will play. Look, it looks like there are 7 regular season games. I think that maybe 6 and 7 if we haven't seen Paul George play at all before then, I think he'll play a couple games before the opening game, the 28th, against the Toronto Raptors, to get something in there of game action. I'd like to see Paul George play a little, and let's see what he looks like as he starts his comeback. We're going to call this the comeback year. We're going to get a hashtag comeback, PG-13. It's a movie. That's right. We're going to call it comeback.
30 for 30.
Comeback. 30 for 30, hashtag comeback, PG-13. Parental advisory advised. That's what we're looking at here. But, Rhett, October 3rd, exactly 1 month from today, the Pacers will face the New Orleans Pelicans at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. That's so the young guys, the draft picks, Turner and Young, Paul George, and then Rhett, the third thing I want to see, these new players, these new acquisitions. How do they look? Team chemistry-wise and everything, on how's the flow of the game with them? Are they getting it? Are they clicking right away? Do we see glimpses of, wow, this is the Indiana team we are going to have this year? Woo! I can't wait. That's what I want to see. Those are my three things, Rhett.
I like it.
Good enough. As long as you like it, Rhett, hey, that's what matters here, co-host. Well, just like that, we have almost approached an hour, Red. That's something when you really don't think you have that much to talk about, you find a way to talk about it.
Exactly.
And make it last. And I can see you yawning there. You're getting tired.
I didn't yawn.
You're getting tired as he lies
Mahimi.
to everyone. Yeah. Yawn. Mahimi. Hopefully we don't have to yawn with his play. Seriously. But, Rhett, I'll let you get to bed. And we'll let our listeners get to bed and everything, and we'll finish up this show in style, Rhett. To recap what was talked about on the show, we discussed the new training facility, the off-season takeaways, really, and just threw a couple other random things out there. Preview the preseason coming up, just kind of filled the time is what we did. So that is all that we have for tonight. Thank you for tuning in to our show. Feel free to leave any comments. Tweet and retweet the show at Kyle M. Newman, at Rhett Hensley, and at Indiana Pacers Talk. We will be back at it next Wednesday, hopefully at the same time here at night. It's going to look like we won't have these shows up by 8 Eastern anymore, but hopefully by the next morning, whatever, we'll be able to have them up, and you guys can listen to them on your way to work. That'll be perfect. But that's what we're looking at here. I got to get my co-host to retweet the show. He's fallen off on that. I got to call him out. Rhett, step it up. Retweet our show, and we'll go from there. Good man. I'm Kyle Newman.
And I'm Rhett Hensley.
Have a great night. And go Pacers.
Go Indiana Pacers.